There it was, as promised. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for being here and joining us here tonight. This is a collaboration that has kind of been a few months in the works between the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation and UCLA Health. We're super grateful for this partnership, and we're grateful to all of you for being here, for taking an interest in this topic. Before we get started, just wanted to explain a little bit about what the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation is, what we do. So the Burbank Arts and Education Foundation is the only organization in Burbank that raises funds for every single public school across the school district. Throughout this past year in 2025, and as we look ahead to 2026, we've been finding opportunities like this one to engage the community with these kind of free opportunities to just learn more about topics that may be impacting our students. It may be impacting parent relationships with students. It may be impacting teacher relationship with students. At the end of the day, all of our work is designed to help enhance the lives of students here in Burbank Public Schools. I feel really grateful to have the opportunity to serve as the Director of Development for the foundation. And that means that I get to be on the front lines and building partnerships like the one that brought us here tonight. And yeah, now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our wonderful speaker who was gracious enough to join us here tonight. So thank you so much, Dr. Factor, for being here. Quick little introduction for Dr. Factor as I pull it up here. Dr. Factor is a licensed clinical psychologist and the director of training at the UCLA Parenting and Children's Friendship Clinic with over 20 years of experience. Dr. Factor has provided individual, group, and family-based interventions and has extensive experience working with autistic and neurodivergent individuals across the lifespan, particularly with children and those with co-occurring challenges such as anxiety, depression, ADHD, OCD, ODD, early psychosis, and mood disorders. She's trained in a number of evidence-based parent-mediated and focused interventions, and both her clinical and research work focuses on the social and emotional development of autistic children, examining family and peer systems, mechanisms of change, and treatment outcomes. We are very fortunate to have you here with us tonight, Dr. Factor. Thank you for being here.
Well, it is my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I am really excited to speak with you all. So, I am going to go ahead and dive right in. And then I think we'll have some time at the end for some questions. So, today I will be talking about screen time and digital safety. And if people have questions, should they put them in the chat? Or, okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, so if you have questions, you can go ahead and just pop them into that little chat box and we'll collect them throughout the session.
Yes, so if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or write it down. We can talk about it at the end. So, a little bit of what we'll be covering today. So, how much screen time is right for your child? We'll also talk about how do you create screen time rules? How do you enforce those rules? And what does digital safety look like? So, we'll be covering all of these topics. And I know that these are all at the top of everyone's mind right now as we are in this age where electronics and screen time are pervasive. So, what do screens include? Well, the answer is screens include all of these items. So, smartphones and tablets, computers, TVs, gaming systems. All of these are screens. And so, in some houses, families will have a specific amount of screen time. What's included in that? The use of all of these. The only exception is if they're used for academic purposes. And I know a lot of schools now give Chromebooks or have assignments online. That would be the only exception. So these are the recommendations by age from the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. How much screen time should you use? And you'll see that for the majority of ages, it really just says you need to decide and set rules. So for 0 to 18 months, the recommendation is no screen time. Video chatting is okay with a caregiver present. So this is where it really fosters that social connection. And if you have family members that live elsewhere, or even if you're just talking with someone you live, just a little bit over, though, it's hard to drive like in the rain. No, we don't like to be out in the rain. But to have screen time and to have your young child on screens, absolutely, as long as you're present. Now, 18 to 24 months, the recommendation is less than 1 hour per day with a caregiver present and only high quality educational programming. So I like to think of Sesame Street as an example of high quality educational programming. It's not that it has to be something that's all about, doing mathematics and reading. No, but something that has an educational value as opposed to something that your child passively is watching. And the key here is that a caregiver is present because, again, we want that social interaction too. And remember, less than 1 hour per day. Then 2 to 5 years. The recommendation is 1 hour per day maximum. Again, only high quality educational programming. Now, notice here, a caregiver doesn't need to be present. So, this is where you can maybe do something else, set your child up in front of a screen, and maybe you're cooking dinner. Again, just 1 hour per day maximum. And we want to make sure it's they're seeing those high quality educational programming. Now, for 6 and older, here is where the guidelines are to just establish those consistent limits on time that's spent using media and what type of media is being used, and to really work with your child on self-regulation of screen time. So a couple years ago, I'm forgetting when exactly, they used to have kind of specific guidelines for the time, but they took that out because through research, they realized that that's not as effective because everybody's different. And it's really more important to set those limits and to have it as a policy in your family. Also, when we think about teens, they are not the most reliable reporters of screen time. And so what they found is that they'd often underestimate the time that they were using screens. So they took that out and said, okay, 6 and older, we're going to work on just really setting those limits. So it's very important to think about both the positives and the negative impacts of screen time because screen time is here to stay. So we don't want to be all positive about it. We don't want to be all negative about it. So some of the positives, there's educational value. There are some great videos that will maybe teach us, our kids, about how things work. They might be visual learners. And so to see the process of, let's say, photosynthesis, that's really helpful. Also, improve motor skills and coordination when they're using different gaming devices, working on those things, that really helps with those skills. This also provides an opportunity to socialize with friends. And this is really important because, especially for kids who maybe are a little more socially anxious, they don't have to think about, okay, I'm going to set up a play date or ask my parent to set up a play date. I can interact with my peers at home. And they also have more opportunities for socialization, which is great. However, as we talk about, we don't want that to be their only opportunity for socialization. So then we think about some of the negatives. And here it's the negative impact of excessive screen time. So notice it's not just screen time in general, but excessive screen time. So that's really where you hear people having 5 hours of screen time a day, 10 hours of screen time a day. That's excessive. So some of those impacts, difficulty sleeping, reduced physical activity. And we know, right? Again, the rain. No, we can't get outside. But when the weather's nicer, yeah, it's so important to walk around and not just be stuck to screens. There are higher rates of obesity, lower grades in school and school performance, right? Sometimes kids don't even pay attention to the assignments that they need to do because they're rushing to get it done. So they can be on their screens, or maybe they're not spending any time on their homework because they're doing screens. Maybe they're not interested in other activities because they're just focused on screens. So we also see less imaginative play, less reading, more irritability, and also increased levels of aggression. So when kids are on screens, and even though sometimes it is such a struggle, right, to turn off screens or, to implement limits, we know if we just let them have that unlimited screen time, it's going to lead to these negative impacts. So it's really important, again, to set those limits. So, how do you create those? We want our kids to grow up, create balance for themselves, but right now they're going to need our help. So it's our job to set those limits. And it really helps them with self regulation, being able to explore different activities, what they're interested in. And these are just some questions that you can all ask yourselves. Does my child have balance in their daily activities? Right? Do they have time for free play, meals, physical activities? Does screen time mean that they're spending too little time on academics, exercise, playing with friends? What activities should be screen free? And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but really thinking about what activities we recommend to be screen free. Different rules for different activities. So, example, as I mentioned, educational versus recreational, socializing, different rules for at home versus in public. Some people say no screens. That's the same if they go over to a family member or a friend's house. Some families don't have screens in their house or only on the weekends, but it's different at someone else's house. Are there different rules during the school year versus breaks? We're getting into the holiday season, so it's good to think about, okay, will there be some different rules when we are traveling, when we're spending time with relatives? And it's a great thing if there are differences then to specify that to your child. Doesn't matter the age, but just to make sure that they know that, okay, this is a little different because, we're traveling, or yep, because you're on break. So they don't expect that all the time. These are the 3 C's to consider because one size does not fit all. Characteristics of the child: age, maturity, their ability to discern, learning style, also the context that they're going to use screens. So we want it to be somewhere where you can supervise the content and then the content of what they're watching. And we know from lots of research that content is actually more important than the time on screens. So, for example, let's say you've done a great job with implementing just an hour of screen time, but they're watching incredibly violent things. That's going to do more harm than if they're watching something, like sweet little animals running around for 3 hours. So we want to think about that because kids will emulate what they're watching. And I always like to mention this, that there are some great resources out there for regulation. So there's one called The Mightier, and it's a video game, but it helps with emotion regulation. So, and it's fantastic. It's research based. So I always like to put a plug for that. And I'm not associated at all, but it's fantastic. So, how do we teach them good habits? So, have a conversation with them that's separate from talking about family rules. And you want to be consistent and firm when you're setting those rules. Don't give in when kids beg. They're going to say 5 more minutes, please, please, please. Don't give in, right? Got to be firm. And if you need to give yourself a little reminder too, put it on your phone, Or as we talk about, having rules that we put somewhere in the house, then that can be really helpful also for us too. And when you're having a family meeting, these are some really important things to remember. Make it pleasant and teach your kids that screen time is a privilege, not a right. And that's hard right now, right? Because it seems like everybody has screens. However, it's not just a given. So we want to make sure our kids know that. And when we're having this meeting, you also want to make sure to keep it short. So we're talking 15 minutes max. It's great if you bring some snacks, make it enjoyable. We're talking about these things that maybe they really don't want to talk about, but again, we want it to be pleasant and separate from talking about other rules you have in the family. Establish that they need to ask permission before taking out devices. That helps you also monitor time. And you can ask them, this is a clever trick, to ask the kids to remind you. So if you've set the rule that, okay, they have an hour to watch, and you say, okay, how much time do you have? And maybe they'll say, I have, 500 hours. Then you can even, infuse a little humor in it and say, oh, I think it might be a little less. I think it was 1 hour. So 1 hour of screen time. So you've said it, you've gone on record. There isn't any confusion there. And if you can, split up screen time in 20 to 30-minute increments throughout the day. Because research has shown that that does help when it's broken up. However, if let's say your child wants to watch a whole movie or an episode of something, or you've been doing an hour long screen time session and that's been fine, keep doing it. We're not saying that you absolutely have to break it up, but that's just a suggestion if you haven't implemented this already. And then clarify what your parent screen time rules are and child's also, because then you'll avoid any disagreements. So, for example, you might need to have your phone with you at dinner, which I strongly suggest that family dinner time is a screen-free time. Let them know. Say, no, I'm going to get a really important call from work, so that's why I'm going to have my phone out. But if there are rules that you can follow as well, do that. So again, you want to set screen-free times. First you work, then you play. So really there shouldn't be screens during homework time other than if they need a device for homework. Meal time. That is so important to have that time where families can connect. There are some families where it's really difficult for everybody to sit down, stay seated. So maybe there's a game, a more passive game, but like a question asking game that they will use during mealtime to make it a little bit more fun and engaging. And then if you have family time, let's say, Friday night, it's okay, ice cream Sunday night. Um, I will say the only exception is let's say family time, you have family movie night, which I love. Then you can, of course, use screen, but you want to make it interactive. So maybe you alternate who gets to pick what you watch. Talk before about the movie. There are some families and they're pretty creative. So, based on what the movie is, then they have a snack related to that. So, you can think about that. So, it's very important to have that family time. And you want to set clear zones that are screen free. So, do not have screens in bedrooms for children under 12. And this is really important because bedrooms and beds are for sleeping. If you put screens in there, that's going to confuse their brain and make it harder to fall asleep. So we want to make sure that screens are out of their bedroom. If they do need a screen for schoolwork and they work better in a quiet space, they have a desk in their room, okay, then they can bring the computer in there and then bring it out. Also, don't have screens around when friends are visiting. So it's so easy for kids to just do parallel play, right? We're playing this game and not even interacting. What you can do is have some of their play date on screens and then some where they're doing another activity. But you want to make sure that there's a balance. And if you know that your child gets really protective over a certain, maybe even a tablet or what they like to watch, then put that away or say, nope, we're not going to watch Netflix when a friend is visiting. And screens are best in family common areas. So we really suggest that kids use tablets or phones or even watch TV in a family common area. One, so that you can pay attention to what they're watching. And then two, so there's that social interaction so that you can be there. And a great time to or a great way to transition kids from using their devices and from screens is to sit down next to them and to ask them questions about what they're watching or what they're playing. It's a nice bridge to then turning it off. You're showing interest in what they're doing. As we talked about, also, post the screen time schedule in a place that's visible to everyone. And all setting all of these rules really helps with online safety. Because if we have all of this in place, kids will have a more open conversation with you. They're not going to, take their screen and go into their room. It's something that it's not a taboo topic, and you can have an open conversation. So this is really important, not just for setting those limits, but really for online safety. You want to designate a home base in a neutral location for screens when they're not in use. So you can see this lovely basket there where they put screens when they're not using them. And the hope is that they'll be out of sight, out of mind, so that they're not just constantly thinking about, oh, yeah, when can I get my screen? No, it's a charging station. And this is huge. Use a 5-minute notice before their time is up. You don't want it to be a surprise. We prep them at the beginning, right, about how much time they have, and then giving them a 5-minute notice. That can come from us. That can come from Alexa. That can come from different parental controls. We have some mentioned here, but if there are some you love, please put them in the chat. I always find that there are more and more coming out, and there are some great ways, and families are so creative with what they do to give their kids the 5-minute notice and then to turn them off as well. And then when they cooperate, praise them. That's really important to catch them being good. When they turn over that iPad, what's hard for them? Praise them for that. We appreciate that behavior. Something that can really help, it's really minor, but it makes a big difference, is instead of putting out your hand and they need to, put the tablet in your hand or the remote in your hand, have them put it on a table and then you pick it up. You're still getting it. However, they're not giving it directly to you. And that makes a really big difference in what they're thinking about. Because they might be thinking, oh, my parents are just going to go and use this in the other room, which isn't the case. So, something to remember is set a good example because kids are more likely to do as you do, not as you say. So, if you talk to your kids about, the dangers of screen time, too much screen use, and posting things online, but they see you on your phone all the time, they're going to copy what they see you doing. So, be aware of your own screen time use. And I love, or I always think about this show. It's called The Parent Test. I don't know if any of you watched it. And so they had a number of parents with different parenting philosophies. And they're was this one family, and the parents, they had a pretty, open, whatever not whatever the kids wanted, but it was a very democratic household. And they had when the challenge was a yes day. And the very first thing that their kids said, no screens. And the parents were really taken aback because they didn't realize how much they were on their screens. And hearing them talk about it after, they reflected on how much they are on their screens and they're mindlessly scrolling. We all do that, right? We're sitting on the couch and we're, scrolling, not looking at anything important, but kids see that. So that's a really good reminder for us to reflect on our own screen time use. And as I mentioned, you don't have to have the same rules. And make sure that you protect a little one-on-one time with each child for just 5 minutes a day. So if you have multiple children, 5 minutes a day with each one of them. And that's so important to foster that positive relationship. And that's 5 minutes where you are really following their lead. If they're drawing, you can draw with them. You can also just watch them, point out what they're doing. That is so important. And there are so many parenting interventions that talk about this idea. So 5 minutes of focused time, and that makes a huge difference. As I talked about, keep a neutral attitude about tech because it's here to stay. We say don't reward good behavior with screen time, but you can. You have other options too. A couple more things I want to mention about digital safety. Have an open, non-judgmental dialogue. That can really help kids process their emotions, what they're seeing. Again, doesn't make things taboo. And if they saw something, because if an ad pops up, you want them to tell you what they are seeing. Ask questions about what they enjoy on screens, what maybe worries them, how it makes them feel. So you're having, again, an open conversation with them. And you're not being punitive. You are showing that, yes, you're interested in this. Or if they're, watching something that you feel this is a pointless show, but it's something they really like, okay, show them you're interested. Ask questions. And again, that will promote that open dialogue. And so they will talk to you about what they are seeing. Also, explain what's allowed, what's not allowed. We don't want to lecture our kids because we know that when we do, they tune us out. So we want to keep things short. However, we want to make sure that they know what's allowed and what's not allowed. So that can be something that you bring up in that family meeting. Or, maybe if you say, oh, I really like this open dialogue we have. So that way I know, what you see on your screen. Leave it at that. And this is important to start when your kids are younger because it's going to just continue as they get older. Also, teach them not to send or share anything that they don't want the entire world to see forever. Because everything can be screenshotted. Everything can be, you know, touched up a little bit and then shared with other people. Or, maybe they post something and then it comes back years and years later. So teaching them that now, that's really important. And also, not to meet with anyone that they just have met online. They can talk with them, but not to meet them in person. Also, not to share personal information. And I was just working with a child because, in addition to all the groups, I also do some individual work. And they were saying that they talked about online safety, and their biggest takeaway was not to meet someone that they've just met online. So kids understand that, and we're not scaring them. It's really important to educate them about being safe online, what to share, what not to share, and if they have questions, to ask you. And these are some great resources. So there's the Family Online Safety Institute, or FOSSI, and there are lots of tools, a lot of research for parents and caregivers. There are guides and articles on different topics. It's great. So topics range from media safety, cyberbullying, privacy, Be Internet Awesome. It's the name of a free website, and some of you might be familiar with these resources. It's offered by Google, and it helps parents teach their kids about being safe online. And so, again, this just makes it not a taboo topic to talk about these things. There are some great videos about as well. And then with cyberbullying, if your child is being cyberbullied, or, and sometimes that happens in a game that they're playing, you can chat on the side and maybe someone's saying mean comments. So you want to make sure that you're using age appropriate language. That's a big one. And then these are just a couple pointers. So the first step is stop. Don't reply to messages from a bully. We know that bullies want a reaction. So by not responding, we're not giving them a reaction because that just adds more fuel to the fire. So if someone is cyberbullying you, don't respond to those messages. Block. Block that person sending hurtful messages and then tell. Tell a trusted adult. So that could be a parent, a teacher, a counselor. And this is important to let your child know these steps because it might happen when they're at school. And you want to make sure that they know. Again, we want our kids to be independent. We're going to help them right now with developing those muscles. And then, as I mentioned, these are some apps for parental controls, but I know there are so many more out there. So, again, share any that you like. These are some really great ones. And these are used throughout kids' lifetimes as well as they get older, too. So, these are really good ones to use, and you can use on different devices as well. And as your kids become more independent, they start going places on their own. Okay, that's another conversation, right? We want to make sure they check in. We can put ways to track their phone. But most of your kids aren't doing that. You're going with them. So this is just a way to control and also to see what they're doing on screens. If they're texting, if they are watching something that maybe they should be watching, we're going to put these parental controls on. Right. And remember the ripple effect. You're not going to notice the effect of restricting and monitoring screen time and implementing a digital safety right away. Just like you don't notice your child getting taller every day. You notice it when you realize, oh my gosh, you can go on this ride and you couldn't before. It's not every day you're seeing them growing a little bit. So it's the same thing with putting all of these limits in place. You're not going to see them maybe right away, but you will see those benefits over time in their wellness, maybe an improvement in their mood, behavior, their interests, right? Their socialization, the skills that they have in talking with adults, peers. So keep that in mind. And we know, as I mentioned, screen and technology, they're wonderful. And also, we want to make sure that they're used in moderation. So, again, some things to remember. You never want anger to be part of your limit setting. So, you don't want to, and I know some of us have those moments where we get so frustrated and yell about something, but we want to try to stay as calm as possible because we know, and I love this piece of research, that if there is anger involved, even if it just happened once, That's what will stay with kids. And they will say, my mom just yelled at me and got so mad at me and always hates when I put my feet on the couch. Maybe that happened once. Parents and caregivers feel most frustrated by the frequency. If it seems like an argument is chronic, if their child does put the feet on the couch every single day and they have to remind them, even if they're super calm about it, that's what we're bothered by. So you want to remember that to keep that anger out of it, the limit setting. And then also, taking away screens should never involve a physical struggle. Not only is that again that's anger, so your child will remember that, and it doesn't feel good to you either. But also, you might break the device, so should not involve physical struggle, roughness, or any pain. If you do need to take something away, maybe wait until your child's at school. Or, if you feel yourself getting really upset, maybe you need to go into the other room. But just remember, we're going to leave that aggression and anger out of it. So I know that was a lot of information. I am excited to hear any questions that you have. If you have follow-up questions, my email is right here. I'm pointing to it and I realize you can't see. So that's my personal email. Feel free to send me questions. Also, these are the groups that were mentioned before. So we have a parenting group for parents of 2 to 12-year-olds. Then we have what's called the Peace Program. So early adolescence or pre-adolescence and early adolescence. So we talk about some of the same skills, but how you need to tweak those for parenting a teen. And then we also have our friendship group where we talk about social skills. And this is targeted for elementary age children. And all of these programs right now, they're all online. And we found that that makes it more accessible to people who are located all over. So again, feel free to reach out to me. We also have, or I also included here, our program emails as well. So thank you all. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up for any questions.
We have a question in the chat here from Krista. How do we best handle screen time limits in families that have kids of multiple ages?
Great question. So if they are pretty different ages, then often there will be, okay, these rules, right? We have these family screen time rules, but there are different rules for each child, just like parents have different screen time rules. And you can even say, this is what's recommended, what's appropriate for your age. And it might be too upsetting, right, for a child to like watch their sibling on a screen. So maybe they need to have that extra screen time when their sibling's out of the house or at a time when maybe that child went to bed if they go to bed at different times. Something else I should mention also is to pin it on a third party. So by saying, this is what the doctors tell us. So it's not you making that decision, it's coming from someone else. So that can sometimes help too. So again, I would recommend having different rules if kids are different ages.
She does have a follow-up question too. I think you answered some of this, but just in case, how do we shift towards new rules that may differ from the current state, or implement all at once or gradually shift?
That's another fantastic question. So having that family meeting, so important. And you can, not that you're taking the blame, but you kind of are. So you can say, you know what? I'm learning more about screen time And I'm realizing that we need to change some of the things that we've been doing. So we're going to have some different rules. And your kids might not like that. You might get a lot of pushback, but you're opening up that conversation. You're putting it on you. And I do recommend have sometimes if let's say you have like three rules, and then over time you can add more. And then let's say they're going from 5 hours of screen time a day, you want to bring it down to 1 hour. Then that should be gradual. So, okay, the next week it's going to be 3 hours, then 2 hours, then 1 hour. So you want them to get used to that. And also, if there are some families where they have screen time only on the weekends, some have screen time in the morning, some just after school. So whatever works best for your family, you can implement that.
Thank you. We have a question from Jacqueline. How do you respond to a teen, a 15-year-old, who says he's old enough to not have parental controls since you do not allow gaming and social media?
Yes, yes. So just talked about something very similar with a parent of a teen earlier today. So a big part is when your child is a teen is we are they view themselves as adults. We know that they are emerging adults. They're not quite there yet. However, they see themselves as being able to make their own decisions. Right? They don't need any guidance. We know they need some. However, we want to show them a little more respect than maybe we did when they were 5. And by respect, I'm not saying that you shouldn't respect your kids. No, we should respect all of our kids. But we want to show them that, hey, we trust them to make some of these decisions. So showing them that, yep, I hear what you're saying, and put it on you. I have those controls because I would worry. I know you are great
What?
at
You are?
um so and say, I know you're great at making those decisions. I would worry about that. So just want to put that on there. And so you're putting it on yourself. You're not saying, I don't trust you. You are saying, I want to make sure that everything is okay. And if you get to a point where, okay, you feel like, yep, okay, let's look at social media. Something that you can do that I know a lot of parents do is they make an account too, or check in with their child as well. If you feel like, okay, they can make these decisions. But if you don't trust them to do that, you don't have to. And they might say, oh, well, everybody else gets to do that. And that might be the case. However, you're not everybody else. You're not everybody else's family. So those are the rules in your family. And again, put it on yourself and let them know, hey, I trust you. I would worry. I worry about that. So just kind of keep that in mind. And there's a great model that I like to show that we want to think about talking from our adults to their adult as opposed to our parent, and then they'll respond like from their child. So we want to be more calm in how we respond to them. So I know that was a little bit off topic, but yes, that is absolutely what we want to talk about with teens. And also, if your kids, again, if they're different ages too, and you okay some for one child, not for the other, again, just say, no, that's what's developmentally appropriate.
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat right now.
Yeah, it's looking like that might be it for the questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Factor, for that. For everybody, I'm just gonna go ahead and drop Dr. Factor's email in the chat just so that if anything comes up afterwards, you all have a chance to reach out with those questions and get them answered. But again, just want to extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Factor, to Mandy at UCLA Health for partnering with us to put on this workshop. I thought that this was super informative. It's something that we often think about, and it's becoming increasingly important as the years move forward. And so I'm really glad that we were able to bring these conversations to everyone. And yeah, I just want to encourage you all to keep a lookout on our social media pages for future opportunities like that. You might be receiving some emails from us with more opportunities. And we just look forward to seeing you all around in the community a little bit more. Thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Good night, everyone.